Welcome to SCBWI Carolina's Book Fairies First Look. I'm your host, Micki Bare. Today, I have the privilege of welcoming author Caroline McAlister. Caroline's father was an English professor. She grew up in a house full of books in Sacramento, California. On weekends, for fun, the family went to used bookstores. Like her father, she now teaches English to college students. But as a young child, she wanted to become an author of children's books. Now, in her second career, she has returned to her earliest aspirations. When she's not reading or writing, you may find her playing tennis, cooking strange vegetarian meals, or quilting some of the fabric scraps she has hoarded. She is married to a philosophy professor. They have two daughters and a large, loopy Labrador retriever. Her books include John Ronald's Dragons and Finding Narnia. Welcome, Caroline. I'm so excited to get to talk with you today.
And vice versa.
So before we begin, let me tell our viewers a little bit about A Line Can Go Anywhere, the brilliant, resilient life of artist Ruth Asawa. Growing up on a dusty farm in Southern California, Ruth Aiko Asawa lived between two worlds. She was Aiko to her family and Ruth at school. But when Japan bombed Pearl Harbor, suddenly she was only Aiko, no matter how much her family tried to cut the lines that connected them to Japan. Like many other Japanese Americans, Ruth and her family were sent to incarceration camps. At the Santa Anita racetrack, Ruth ran her fingers over the lines of horsehair in the stable stalls the family moved into. At the Rower Relocation Center in Arkansas, she drew what she saw: bayous, guard towers, and the barbed wire that separated her from her old life. That same barbed wire would inspire Ruth's art for decades as she grew into one of the most influential artists of the 20th century. Throughout her career, she created enchanting, twisting sculptures and curving shapes that connected, divided, and intersected. This gorgeous biography explores the magnificent life of Ruth Asawa and her timeless contributions to the art world. Caroline, what a wonderful and timely tribute to a brilliant artist and strong role model. I was especially drawn to the poignant title. What about Ruth's story made you want to write a children's picture book biography about her?
Well, I think it was the story that gets repeated in her interviews and the story she told about sitting on the back of the leveler on the farm and making these shapes with the heels of her feet in the dirt. And that was an image I could see at the beginning of a children's picture book. And it sort of captured her early childhood on the farm.
There was obviously a research process tied to this. What was that process for you? And during that process, did anything surprise you?
Yeah, a lot of things. I had taught a course at Guilford College in which I included some books that came out of the Japanese American experience in World War II. I taught a book called No No Boy that was about young men coming back from having been incarcerated and being not being able to find a place in either community, being alienated. So I had that background. And also, I live in North Carolina, so I knew a little bit about the Black Mountain College. I think what surprised me, some things that surprised me, I didn't know about the kids at school resisting. And when they had to say the Pledge of Allegiance, saying, except for us, when it was the land of, when they said the Pledge of Allegiance, it was the land of the free thing. And I loved finding that out. I loved finding out how much Ruth and her siblings wrote letters to Washington, because her mother couldn't speak English. They became the advocates to bring the family back together because her father had been sent to a different camp and they didn't know where he was, and so they were really the ones who had to advocate for him. I think the other thing I was amazed to find out, well, there were just so many things. She had 6 children. Also, one of her younger sisters, what the family had actually sent her to Japan to spend time with relatives before the war broke out. And she got stuck over there. And so the extent of the family being dislocated and broken apart and separated from each other, I think it was a revelation to
I
me.
guess. And so, what do you hope children will connect to and love about the book? Like, what makes it a good children's picture book?
Ruth herself was an educator and an advocate for teaching art to children. And actually, the school where her children went in San Francisco, one of her kids, one of her 6 kids, came home from school one day, and the art homework or project they'd been given was a coloring sheet. And Ruth just hit the ceiling. And she said, we need real art education in the schools done by real working artists. And so the school where her kids went actually ended up being renamed after her and becoming the Ruth Asawa School for the Arts. So what I hope kids will connect to there is Ruth's passion for making. And she said, make and hands-on making. She said doing art, one of the things that made it educationally something kids should be involved with was you're problem solving when you're making art. And I love that.
Mhm. So, this book is brilliantly illustrated by
Yeah.
Jamie Green. Have you worked with Green before? What did you like best about these illustrations?
I had not worked with Jamie Green before. What I really like that they did was they really caught on to my use of lines as a metaphor and made lines a visual metaphor throughout. I also really love the double spread where she uses the gutter of the book to illustrate the line between the Japanese world at home and the American world at school. I thought that they did a neat thing there.
Do you?
She captures Ruth's dynamic creative energy. She looks like the sun. And let's see. And the end pages are just fabulous. And let's see. Here is that page where you see the gutter,
Yeah.
and here's the Japanese world at home, and she's wearing her slippers and carrying a shoki bag. And here's the world at school with cupcakes and hot dogs, and and she's wearing her hard shoes indoors.
Wow. So that kind of brings us into the publication process itself. What was the publication process like for this book?
Arduous. Um, but also, this is just sort of the way book publishing works. The first editor left Roaring Brook sort of in the middle of the editing process. So then it got passed on to another editor, and I met with that editor and talked about doing this, and this. And then that editor got moved up. That editor had just been handed all of the other editor's stuff. And so then she got moved up and didn't have time to work on this book. So then it got given to another editor. She's been fantastic.
I hope that hasn't shied you away from more publications. What's next? Do you have other writing projects in development?
I do. I just actually had a meeting with my agent and an editor this week, and I just don't know that I can talk about it
That's okay. We're just
yet.
excited to know there's stuff in the works.
Yeah, it's about another artist. I'll just say a Quaker artist. And the editor said he was going to put together an offer on it. I'm kind of floating over the moon right now.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
And of course, we all want to stay in touch to see what's coming up. And so we need to know how can caregivers, educators, librarians, and others stay up to date? What are your most used social media platforms and that kind of thing?
Well, I've got a website, CarolineMcAlisterAuthor.com, and there is a contact thing on the website. I'm on Facebook. I do have an Instagram. It's kind of puny, um, because I can't figure out how to do it unless my daughter's home to help me. So,
That's okay. That's what kids are for.
yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Caroline. And again, congratulations on the release of A Line Can Go Anywhere, The Brilliant, Resilient Life of Artist Ruth Asawa.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mickey.